This is AI Governance with Dr. Freddie Seba, a podcast and practical guide to AI oversight for boards and executive leadership.
Welcome, welcome. We are very lucky today to have as our guest Vijay, who is a good friend of mine. And Vijay is somebody with an amazing background. I had the opportunity to work with him on the venture builder side, but now he's wearing a lot of hats. And would love to get him to introduce himself. And we're going to be focused on funding is one of his key values these days. And we're going to see how that goes with AI governance, which is where we focus in this conversation. And the idea is a lot of people are concerned about hype, AI hype. So how does he see that? And I let him introduce himself, but he launched a book not too long ago. He's also a faculty at UC Berkeley, so lots to catch up with little time. So again, welcome, Vijay. Good to see you again, and
My
thank you
pleasure.
for.
Sure, and it's great to be here. Thank you for having me so much on this podcast today, Freddie.
Thank you. So let me just stop my sharing my screen. So first question that I ask all my guess is, why should somebody listen with so many podcasts, so little time? So
Yeah,
why should somebody spend the next 40, 50 minutes listening to this conversation?
I think this conversation is going to be interesting. If you care about what is actually getting built and hitting the market with success in AI, if you want to know how raising capital isn't just about serendipity, but about systems. It can be something that people create success for by following a process. And then finally, I think we're just going to have a good time. This is going to be a great listen.
Excellent, excellent. So thank you for that. So can you, I didn't do a justice to your background. So can you walk our audience on your
Sure.
background, your journey, how you got where you are?
Absolutely. So I am someone who has at times been a founder, but throughout my career has been of service to different kinds of entrepreneurial leaders. And I'd say some of the highlights are, starting companies in e-commerce and fintech, incubating them when we were working together in what we then called venture creation, and now you would call a venture studio. Subsequently running accelerators and incubators around the world with corporate partners during my time at 500 Startups, also known as 500 Global. And in addition, helping founders to raise money during difficult times by following a repeatable process, as well as meeting their customers and developing great networks and communities. So those are like the main threads. And as you mentioned today, I am a faculty member at UC Berkeley Extension, focusing on leadership and change management for startup founders. In addition, I am the author of a book I'm sure we'll get to talk about a little bit today, the funding framework. And finally, I am head of investments for a venture builder called GAI Ventures, where we bring together domain experts, some product engineering, and also capital to incubate, invest, and spin out companies that are in the field of AI.
Excellent. So lots to talk about. So and congrats again for your book. I really love it. So how and I love the fact that there's not too many people like you and I who bring experience, real experience in doing things, because you've been an operator, as you mentioned. You also have helped other and do help a lot of people now into their projects, and you write about it. So where do you spend the most time, and where do you see the most challenge in the context of AI and this rapid technology disruption?
Yes, AI is either hugely overhyped and oversold, or way underhyped and undersold. There's probably no middle ground here. But where I'm spending my time is specifically to identify people we can partner with to build exciting new technology companies. And these need to be folks that have a secret or an insight into their industry. They need to be individuals who have the ability to sell and be a founder leading sales because we're doing B2B. And also to focus on where we can be great collaborators with them, serving basically as a technical coach and helping to create a company that otherwise wouldn't exist. We think that these types of solo founders are exceptional. There's a new time and a new situation and conditions for solo founders to succeed, like hasn't been possible before. And so that's probably what makes us different. So I think nurturing and supporting those relationships, helping them in the present and downstream with what they need to do, and making sure we make great decisions there. That's where I'm spending most of my time right now. And I'm not doing that. I'd say my time is spent either in the classroom or as an executive coach to founders or to executives at late stage startups.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So, where do you see the most activity? What type of workflows for AI? I mean, if you think about talking to leadership and talking to boards, they have so much going on in their lives. So, how do they go about funding some of these companies, or B, acquiring or integrating their AI solutions?
Yeah, I think AI fits their strategy for them when it answers three questions. The first is oversight. Is there genuine market demand? Like, is there a pull in the market for this thing to exist? And so, in our experience, we spent time 4-week customer development sprint to validate that. Secondly, is there a competitive moat? Does AI create some sort of defensible advantage through data, through some domain expertise, or even the network effects that you may have in this market? And then finally, transformation readiness. I'm sorry if I'm not sure if you're hearing that in the background, but that's my new dog going crazy. But I think the final thing is transformation readiness. And so this company or this business needs to be ready to do the work behind the scenes to be successful. And so is there capacity to do this? How do you create capacity? We talk about cultural changes, but in addition to technical ability. And so that might mean changing attitudes around risk and experimentation and how to handle failure. So if there isn't an answer for all three, I think you're probably moving very fast and with great enthusiasm, either in the wrong direction or you don't have enough gas to get all the way there.
So, should they wait? I mean, how do they balance the hype versus, FOMO, right? Fear of
Yeah.
missing out. So, because there are real consequences, and we're working or we're dealing, especially leaders who are managing so many priorities, and the risk is pretty huge, right? So, how do they
Yeah.
go about thinking on these issues?
Yeah, I think if you have the following set of principles, you can be successful. So you want to build when that AI capability is very core to your business, maybe even a competitive differentiation. Secondly, you have proprietary data or knowledge about a field that is very unique. Yeah, a lot of people probably overestimate the uniqueness of their domain expertise, but that can be a reason to build. And then thirdly, you can attract and retain the correct talent. When you are missing one of those things, then you would want to, instead of build, you'd want to buy. You'd want to buy some sort of table stakes capability. You don't want to be in the business of compliance. You want to be in the business of payments or lending or something else, right? And so this is when you might buy that capability in some way. I think when speed is really important, buy can be important. However, one note is, when you have the right like kind of offtake, like you have someone bring in or you purchase an external product, you need to have the right like integration and off take. And so can you do that in a way that creates, if not or lack of dependency or independence, then some balance between being like dependent or being totally autonomous with regard to that like external provider.
So let's dive deeper on that because you spend a lot of time talking to founders, to CEOs who are building all of these amazing applications, right? So you're helping nurture them and they go very focused, as you mentioned, and they have all these capabilities. But then on the other side, you deal with the CEOs and and the boards who are looking at the enterprises that you're building. How do they go about implementing or deciding who to partner with, either to buy or to partner or to co-build? How do
Yeah,
they go about that?
I think that becomes a risk management question. Um, so one is around whatever dependency or lock-in you have. So is your data going to be portable if you work with an external partner? Can you work with multiple vendors and multiple models? Secondly, are you outsourcing the critical thinking of your leadership of your employees, right? So humans are going to play a role in decision loops, and it's important that AI doesn't just replace judgment for leaders or for management, but for everybody up and down. And then I think the other thing is like just like managing the relationship. So are you auditing and following up on what an outside model or forward deploy engineering team or whatever or consultants or whatever we used to just call consultants, I guess, are doing? Are you following up there and the systems and the models they have to avoid hallucination and to ensure that you're getting what you thought you were getting?
Great question. So, should we be concerned about, keeping humans in the loop? How do you think about, the whole agentic AI and where do we really need, you talk about critical thinking and
Yeah.
you need to nurture your teams because your companies are your teams, right? So how do you go about thinking about this?
Yeah, I think AI as a coworker and a thought partner or your intern or something like that is really exciting for anyone who's just entering the workforce. I think if you're expecting a job to be handed to you that existed 10 years ago, that probably doesn't exist in the same way. However, something I've told my students is get really good at telling agents what to do. Like you should be prompting now so you can be orchestrating tomorrow.
Hmm.
And that's what I would that's what I would expect for them to be proficient and expert at in just a few years. So that means these agents are force multipliers for the vast majority of us, and that should be a good thing. It will expand the size of markets, which is what historically happens with certain types of technology. I think tasks go away, but the opportunity to do certain type of work and the purpose behind those tasks gets fulfilled in multiple different ways and actually in a bigger way than was thought possible before.
So a lot of people think about, the dichotomy of adopting AI or not adopting. And what I'm hearing here, you're telling your students in this is engage with it, use it, because those are the ones who are gonna move up in the ranks, and those are the ones that, AI is not gonna take their jobs, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I mean, in the same way that, when the PC dropped on people's desks in the early 1980s, it became essential to work with this thing. It's not going anywhere. And it will get better with time. So we're at a similar type of moment from perhaps 40 years ago in the workplace. There are other sorts of analogies to other moments in history, such as obviously Web 1.0 and other types of technology and the impact it has. But we're fundamentally reducing the cost of cognition and increasing the leverage for human judgment, for human taste, for humans to relate and connect around ideas in ways that weren't possible before, and to materialize those in ways that weren't possible. I mean, just today, my 8-year-old and I put together before school, around breakfast, a simple Lovable app based on something she was drawing the night before. And whether you're using Lovable or Cursor or Replit or Baseboard 4, it doesn't matter. It's more like, how can you concretize your ideas? Just theory or just strategy isn't enough. We need to materialize that through execution. But now on that path is, the ability to rapidly prototype and create. So at least from the startup perspective, that's very exciting and an interesting effect of reducing this cost of cognition. But for the vast majority of the workforce that isn't in a startup or perhaps is in a more mature company, figuring out how I get my work done differently and how I can be the person in the company who shows everybody what's possible is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
So there you're talking about your 8-year-old basically doing a prototype within apps. So how does that impact your, all the hats you're wearing? How does that impact, your founders, where now you can prototype, not only have a PowerPoint presentation, but you can have something that works and just start raising money? And how do you
Yeah.
basically tell that
Mm-hmm.
board member that that they should be outsourcing that? So how do you go about this pretty fascinating world where everything moves at an amazing speed?
Perhaps 30, 40 years ago, if you had the right relationships, you could raise money on the back of a napkin. And then you needed slides. And then you needed to have, some sort of basic app or wireframes or something, right, for that first check. And today you can employ tools such as, all the various startup practices to build, measure, and test with these prototypes. So this doesn't mean that anyone can replace you with a prototype. What it means is everybody can learn really fast. And so there's plenty of AI slop out there. I don't mean to say vibe coding is perfect, but I do love that it allows us to learn really quickly. And so the stakes are higher in terms of being able to learn quickly. And also, as I described, the stakes are higher to show something tangible behind your ideas, as opposed to what was necessary before in order to raise capital.
Thank you for that. So how do you define in this world where value resides and what's durable value versus activity?
Yeah. So we talk about this in my class, the idea of real metrics versus vanity metrics. And real metrics are actionable. Vanity metrics make you feel good and allow you to signal but not really show obvious progress, perhaps. So the real value signals are around adoption metrics. It could be, active users by certain targets, not target users, not based on signups. So that in terms of conversion, workflow integrations, right? So where AI becomes really sticky and hard to rip and replace, and it's not optional to completing a job. Efficiency gains, meaning like you can put into equation like the time and cost savings to articulate some kind of ROI, some kind of return on investment. And then customer retention, which looks like the user can't go back to imagining the old methods because this is like made their life so much better. We forget how every purchase is a personal and emotional one in the enterprise, and people are buying their future self, which is not I need this new you know financial planning and accounting AI product. I need to wrap up my work so I can like leave at a decent hour on Friday night and go, spend time with my loved ones, right? Like this is this is the thing that's going on in the thought bubble above people's heads and isn't necessarily captured in most business plans. But if you can speak to that, what you have to show is irresistible and shows up in correct customer retention. And then finally, a value signal that may be underappreciated is what is the clear line from the AI capability to business outcomes? So there's a lot of correlation. People are not always able to do a good job in terms of showing the causality. So I think this will get better over time, but if we can articulate that causality in the linear way in which humans are happiest thinking, then I think that becomes a strong value and risk signal.
Great. So thank you for phrasing that. So moving into the other side of the equation, risk, because we started talking about the risk of this technology. We talked about, the human in the loop, and we're talking about, embedded AI and agentic AI. So how do you measure where the risks are and what you recommend your CEOs, boards, and founders and investors, which you deal a lot with? How do they go about that?
When technology is new, the risks are usually unclear. But if you talk to a lot of CISOs, a lot of chief information security officers, they can tell you how they're concerned about, data breaches. There are people in risk and control areas who are concerned about different types of error rates, customer success, doesn't want to create new complaints, right? Everyone has these ideas about risk. That doesn't mean not do them. It means manage to do those things really, really quickly. And I think, if what you're looking is for some sort of explainable or auditable AI, and I mean, I'm not a computer scientist, but, the better that you can explain the decisions that are made by AI to different stakeholders or regulators is something that we won't be able to avoid. Whether it's because there are laws, maybe fair lending, or there are lawsuits around medical malpractice or something else, like you've got to have an answer around that particular risk of auditability and explainability.
So, given those risks, should leaders wait to get stronger signals, to have the technology more stable? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they could wait until other people figure it out. Or they could ask themselves, what is it we're trying to learn? Do I have a hypothesis? What is the cheapest, fastest, smallest way for me to, to test this hypothesis? And with that culture of experimentation and learning, they get to capture a lot of value rather than wait for someone else to figure it out and then maybe create some facsimile or table stakes type of incremental innovation rather than a breakthrough that could be far more accretive and value creating for the enterprise.
Should they use the same frameworks they have now to measure those risk, or how do they go about understanding and mitigating
Mm.
risk?
I think this is going to look very different for every company, but I think, the simplest way of it is looking at, what is the, what is the effort versus impact, right? If we looked at that on a 2x2, we might say, wow, change management effort is really high, but, the impact of doing it or not doing it is really dramatic because our entire business won't be able to manage technology or compete when other people have perhaps used agents or created different types of models that they're using effectively, and we're still stuck in the past. The other thing is like data readiness. They might see the effort there is really high, but the impact could be enormous by actually using the data in the company that has not been released from its silos and doesn't have good quality today or even the right governance around it. So I look at the impact of doing it and not doing it against these things that people are kind of reluctant to engage with. I think integration complexity is another really big one. So with integration complexity, you're having to make hard decisions and expensive decisions around what to do with legacy systems. And so again, that's another thing where this kind of like effort versus value and versus like impact trade-off is there, but it could be really great. So people like look at the effort and perhaps they underappreciate the impact.
So on that note, do you think that integration is the heaviest lift for this organization? Is it change
Yeah.
management, which you alluded in the beginning, or where do you see
Yeah,
the
I think all the problems in technology companies are not technical; they're people related. And so, yes, the change management, the integration, all these things matter. I've heard people optimistically say there doesn't need to be any change management. You don't need to retrain people because agents will do stuff for you and with you, and then that'll be it. You'll just prompt and talk to them in natural language and you won't be learning something else. But I think even that is a type of change. And that requires you to set a goal for what that looks like. Otherwise, the business will kind of meander into some version of adoption.
So we're lucky that we're here in Silicon Valley, especially in this historic moment, right? So, but we tend to be in this bubble and believe that everybody is kind of thinking. So, to boards and leaders out there outside, not that technical, should they be thinking about engaging, let's say, with LLMs and not agents now? Or they go slowly into integrating that? Or what's a simple rule that we can advise them? Saying, and you
Yeah.
started saying maybe pick one workflow, maybe customer service. So, how would you go about advising them and telling them where to go and how to slowly or not get into this?
I think start with one group that is really underwater and perhaps you've underinvested in historically. It might be your legal department, it might be human resources. And you start with something like, 40% of the emails we get are, hey, is Monday a holiday? Or something like that. It's like, show that we can implement AI in this to, let's say, address some of these things, make the lives of that department better, and show a clear before and after, and tell a story about this is how it was, and then we did this thing, and then here it is later, and everyone's happy. Why? Because that's a change management exercise, it's a technology deployment exercise, and it's a workflow optimization exercise that then you can learn from and then apply it from HR to legal or to some other group. So you can do it in that direction, or if you're trying to be ambitious off the bat and there's a big hairy or audacious goal, it's starting with the customer. Like, what are the problems our customers are facing that we can solve today that weren't possible before, and how will we create a pilot or a proof of concept for one of them that brings these capabilities forward in ways that really address things that bother them. So those are ways in which you get started. But I think Mark Twain said, among many great quotes, the best way to get ahead is to get going, right? And so get going. And that might look like an LLM. That might look like for your legal team. That might look like an agent for HR that answers emails. Get started is really important, as long as there's a hypothesis for testing behind any of those initiatives.
Great. That's a good way to think about it. How about and wanna always try to
Mhm.
stay away from helping people to choose models and vendors and stuff. Um, so there's a lot of talks about, open source versus proprietary models, open weights. Ones are cheaper, you have more controls, other are, a little more robust, but you get locked in. So how do you tell leaders and your founders and your investors how to navigate those uncertainties?
I think it's very hard. I don't personally make specific recommendations, but ask, okay, what allows you to go ahead really fast right now? And what do you want the relationship to look like with a particular vendor or technology partner in 2 years? Beyond that, it's really hard to say. Whether that's a little startup or AWS, like you can have a perspective. The good news is that it's becoming easier and easier to integrate different models and to work in multiple clouds and things like that. And I'm seeing that possible in the products that we're building within our engineering and design team today. So I think if we can figure this out, then larger startups and organizations should too.
And how do you keep up with all the changes? Every week there is something that you hear from technical people and from leaders. Like, look, things are breaking because these technologies are moving so fast. So we have a procedure, we have a protocol, we have training, and suddenly there's a new update and everything breaks. So how do you go about thinking? And again, this our audience is not. I mean, they're not computer scientists, they're not data science, but technical, because it seems like in this generation, in this day, we need to be all technical, whatever that means.
I enjoy listening to interviews with different types of leaders. And again, you get to see the distinction between someone who is leading one of these foundation models or hyperscalers, right, all the way down to the person operating a retailer or an insurance company or an oil company, and what it looks like for them. So checking out some of those interviews are really interesting. I mean, sometimes they're using a lot of words but not saying anything, but occasionally they will give examples in terms of what's real. And so that is the first thing. Is like, what are people actually doing as opposed to what they're promising. And then separately to that, I try and read one or two newsletters a day that helps me see how people are being more data driven, trying new things, getting creative. I like a newsletter called Superhuman a lot. I think I have a very high bar now in terms of whether I want to read something. But yeah, there's a lot to keep up with. I'm not an engineer or computer scientist by training, and so I always feel like I'm the least informed person in the room. But I just get good at asking lots of open-ended questions to hopefully understand, who is this for, why does it matter, and why is now the time for adoption or for implementation.
I don't, thank you. You're always very humble. So this is something that you always been that good. So are those the questions? I mean, boards meet once and investors, they don't operate. They
Uh-huh.
just meet, once a month or once every other month. So what are the questions that they should be asking their teams?
Yeah, I think like the like boards started, you know, asking what are we doing with AI? With they didn't have recommendations, suggestions. They were just like said like, well, we got to be doing something with AI, right? Which is kind of like in 1996, your board saying like, what are we doing on the World Wide Web? It's like, we'll have a website. What is it for? We don't know, right? And so we've gone from like we're doing something we don't know what it is or why to perhaps today understanding, oh, okay, we're going to give our people more time, or we're going to um, harness our data in some different way, or we're going to reduce the cost in some area. And so those are today the low-hanging fruit that every board should be talking about. There are other things I think that are bigger and greater than that. And AI is not the only technological revolution in our world today. There are plenty of other important things that boards should be paying attention to. And there's always a flavor of the month, and certainly it is AI now, but it's for boards to like not just say like, hey, why aren't we doing something about this? But um, to ask management teams, okay, what's our hypothesis? What are our real or actionable metrics around that? How will we know if we've been successful? And then how do we like keep building and keep figuring out how to build, measure, and test, again and again.
So we just have a couple more minutes. So what would be your message to your students these days and then to your co-founders or founders?
Um, if there's one message, it's that AI is a leadership challenge, sort of disguised as a technology problem. And so if your company, if your business will be one where the people in the company can evolve really fast, then you'll be successful. Um, we're all changing. The question is it intentional, and can we do it in a way that is ready to keep up with what's happening in the world?
Can we align that with our values, with our goals,
Yeah,
the way you started the conversation in the beginning?
yeah. I think that's super important. You know, I think leaders that talk about values, talk about goals, that talk about a North Star, have nothing to do with AI. They have to do with, you know, making this customer's life better. It has to do with impacting, the mission of the company, perhaps on climate or health, or allowing creators to do work that they want and to have that freedom. All of those things and mission and purpose are really important. And so if you're talking about AI and this is incongruous with the purpose and the mission and the values behind that you've articulated to date, then it won't click. The why at um, a limbic brain level won't engage, to paraphrase Simon Sinek. So I think that's super important for people to align. And if it's something that's understood well in the company, then it will be actually pretty easy to do, or at least people will not protest and fight because it's on brand and it's consistent with who you are.
Excellent. So I think that's a great way to close this conversation. Vijay, I really appreciate you. I'm very happy to have you spending this time with us, to being able to
Of course.
share with the rest of the world some of the conversations we had in the past, and I really appreciate it. So those of you should follow Vijay. He has an amazing podcast. He wrote an amazing book. So I'll drop the his info in the podcast. So this is somebody you want to know. So again, Vijay, I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Freddie. You're very kind. This is such a good treat.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, everybody.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of AI Governance with Dr. Freddie Seba. For more insights, be sure to subscribe and share with a friend or colleague on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube Podcasts. To learn more, visit freddieseba.com. Until next time.